Hi again. So for this video I am going to show a little bit more about the elements of the language. So for example, I showed all this stuff like this source code and this shadow CLJS file, but I did not explain any of this. So let's start by showing exactly what each of these things is. So the first thing that you have to understand is that Clojure is a language with low syntax. It's the same for all Lisps, honestly. Which means that you have few elements that are syntactical elements in the language. So for example, explaining a little bit better what I meant with this. Everything that you have to run, that you want to run in a Lisp-based language, and Clojure is no exception, you have to start with a parenthesis. Parentheses are never optional. They are always either required or not. Meaning that every time that you want to call something, you will open up a parenthesis. So for example, if I want to print something on the screen, I am going to call println and then write something. And now you can see that it ran. It printed hello in the screen. Println is a function that returns nil always. There are functions that return other things. So for example, the defn will always return the name of the thing that we defined, which in this case is hello world core/main. And that's why we have to put hello world.core/main here. That is the qualified name for this function. If I want to run main, meaning I want to run exactly what is inside the body of the main, I will do the same rule. Open a parenthesis, call main. And that will print hello world. That's exactly what we expect. If you want to define a variable, you will use open parenthesis and run the command def. Def is basically a command that defines variables. So for example, if I want to call this variable age and get the number 10 for it, I will do like this, def age 10. And now I have the variable age here. To see what's inside the age is the same on all other languages. You just write age and that's it, you have the value for it. If you want to do arithmetic operation, you cannot do this. For example, you'll see that returns 2. And 10 plus 2, as far as I know, it's not 2, it's 20. And the reason for that is that ClojureScript is actually running this, then this, then this, and returning the last element. As you can see, the CLJS core/main/plus is the function that sums numbers. So if I want to write 10 plus 2 or age plus 2, I will have to again open a parenthesis, put plus here, age 2, and now you have 20. This is somewhat complicated for some people that are not used to the language, but understand that plus also accepts multiple arguments. So for example, if I have 2 and then 1 and then 3 here, I will actually sum 10 with 2 and 1 and 3 and get the result, which is 16. Okay, wonderful. Other things that are interesting is that something like, for example, age. If I want to ask if age is lower than, I don't know, 20, again, I have the same rule. I put the operator first, that's the minor, and then age, and then 20, and you say that is true. Again, this is multiple arguments available. So if I put 1 here, it's checking if 1 it's lower than age, and age is lower than 20, and if 20 is lower than 21, and so on and so forth. So if each one of these break the rules, for example, age is 10, 10 is not lower than 10, then this whole thing will be false. Which is kind of cool, honestly, because you don't need to get 1 less than age or in this case and age lower than 10 and 10 lower than 20, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are the syntactical elements for calling things. But on Shadow CLJS we have other things. So let's just copy paste this here and see what they mean. Okay, so the first thing is, what is this thing? This is called a keyword. Oh, also these are how we do comments in the ClojureScript language. We do the semicolon. So a keyword, it's basically a fast way to get something that should be an enumerator, for example. So you have like source paths. This is a key for a map. So that's why it's a keyword. It's faster to look up and it's faster to write and so on and so forth. And it does occupy a little bit less memory than a full-blown string. And this is what we call the vector. It's similar to the JavaScript array, but it's immutable. Oh, and also this is also something that we have to say. Everything in ClojureScript is immutable by default. So for example, age, you don't have any operation to change age. You have to either define a new age, which is horrible, and you don't do that, or just live with the fact that it's immutable. We have ways of controlling immutability that we'll see later. Okay, so this is a vector, meaning that it's an ordered list of two elements, and the two elements are two strings, the source and the test. If I want to get the first element of a vector, I use get with 0. That is the first element, the source, and 1 is the second element. Exactly the same as JavaScript, it's 0 indexed. So the 0 is the first element and the 1 is the second, and so on and so forth. There are shortcuts for example, getting the first element of something, to getting the second element of something, and to get the last element of something. So these are basically shortcuts for these operators. And keywords are basically objects that are as usable as anything else. So for example, if I get the first of an element, it just returns the source path, that's the keyword. And the map, that's the last element that we'll see, is this one that we start with like curly braces. So for example, I want a name that's called Mauricio, and I want a surname that's called Szabo. Then this is a map. It's a collection of keys that indexes the values. So you cannot have two keys with the same name. You see that it's a duplicated key called name. But you can do this, for example, which is horrible. Please don't do that, but you can, because a keyword it's not the same as a string, but a string is the same as a string. For example, this is also not valid. Also, ClojureScript have equality for these kinds of objects, which means that yes, the keys can be arbitrary elements like 0, 1, for example. As you can see, it's a valid key, but you cannot have duplicated keys even if they are complex collections, because this is actually for ClojureScript, these are the same, these are equal basically. So if I ask if two objects are equal and two vectors are equal, it will say that they are equal if they have the same element and if they have the same values inside of them. So for example, these are not equal, but these are. Okay, wonderful. Again, maps, back to maps. If you want to get elements inside the map, you use again the get function. So I want the element called name that's inside the map, and I get Mauricio back. If a map contains only keywords as their not only keywords, but if you want to get a keyword inside a map, there's a shortcut, because that's actually what we do most of the time. As you can see, now we have the name Mauricio, and basically this keyword as a function is the same as calling get with the keyword as the second argument and the map as the first argument. So that's it for now. So after this, you know what is a function, what is a variable, how to call things, how to get maps, how to define maps, how to define vectors, and how to get values from maps and vectors. And that's basically how you work with Clojure. Most of the time you don't abstract these things into complex things like, I don't know, structures or anything. You just use what Clojure offers you, that are these maps and vectors and everything else.